Welcome to Think Free with Stephen
and Daniel.
Two brothers breaking down ideas and ways of thinking about this thing we call life. Unlock your mind to explore more than you ever thought possible. Think Free. All right, the topic I was hoping to jump into to start with anyway, I thought it was originally going to be just let's deconstructing capitalism, because there's a meme that I see and I'm like, I don't think that's talking about what we're talking about. I think there's a few other memes out there that, as memes do, it oversimplifies a topic and then people just like it or share it, or it fuels a conversation that now we're not talking about the thing that we could be talking about, which is the real issue.
You're talking about all memes, right?
Pretty much exactly what a meme is, right? So I thought maybe I'd grab a couple that particularly stand out to me. And
Okay.
so I'll start with the first one is an anti-capitalist meme. And before I go into it, I'll just say, not here to defend capitalism, not here to take it down or to say that it's good or bad or there's another alternative to it. I just think if we are going to criticize it, let's be accurate about what we're criticizing and make sure that we're, criticizing something that's realistic or reasonable or that we have a chance of actually fixing, instead of shooting the shot and missing the chance to build something better because we're focused on something that's really not possible or that misses the point. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Okay. So the one is a picture of a laborer or a worker, and they're showing to their boss, who of course is fat and ugly and has a top hat and a monocle. They're showing to their boss, here's all the labor that I've produced. And the labor is represented by these blocks, like 7 or 8 blocks high.
The widgets or something
that they made, and they're proud of it. And they're saying to their boss, here's the labor that I've produced. And then the boss says, all right, I'll take that. And he takes 80% or something like that of those blocks and walks off with a maniacal grin on his face. And then the last panel is the laborer is just left there with a fraction of what he actually produced as his take home. And so the idea is it's reflecting that the laborers actually do the work and the bosses or the capitalists get the benefit of that. And so then that spurs this idea of capitalism is wage theft. Are you familiar with this one? Have you heard it, seen it?
I have not seen the meme, but okay. I was just going to pull up that, actually reading an article about this.
Okay.
Keep going.
A similar type of
that's Karl Marx.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of where I was going to go with it, is that so much of any type of deconstructing capitalism or critique of capitalism, especially now, most of it, if not all of it, traces back to Karl Marx or people like him who have built on his work. I think he's definitely the grandfather of it, the godfather of critiquing capitalism and showing how it's exploiting workers and the disparity and all that good stuff. And so he makes a lot of good points that are relevant to his time and space, and a lot of it that has persisted. But I think what's hard for me to wrap my head around is that meme doesn't tell the whole story. And maybe it does in some extreme cases. Maybe it does in Karl Marx's time. Maybe people have experienced that feeling of, I produced all this value, I produced these products, these widgets, this service, whatever it is, and the boss just gets to take 80% of it, and I'm left with a pittance. So I think that's true in some cases. I don't think that tells the whole story, and I don't think that's accurate for most of what we consider capitalism, especially in America. And I can only speak to that because I don't have experience with it anywhere else in the world. So some of the critique of capitalism in that particular meme that I'd like to point out is that what it ignores is the tools and the proprietary technology, the infrastructure that were all there, produced and made and built by the capitalist. And what it does is the meme itself, and even critiques of capitalism, it pits the worker or labor against the owner or the manager or the capitalist. And it creates a dichotomy between the two and says one is the good guy and one is the bad guy. If you're critiquing it, if you're Marx, if you're anti-capitalist or deconstructing capitalism, then obviously the labor force are the good guys. They're the ones who do the work, who produce the product. And the capitalist, the owner, the manager is the bad guy. They're just exploiting the workers, taking advantage of it, making hand over fist profits off of the backs of people who are suffering and struggling. Which isn't to say that isn't the case in some instances. It isn't to say that hasn't been the case for a lot of people over the centuries, especially with the Industrial Revolution and before workers' rights and unions came about. There was definitely exploitation and abuses and that sort of thing. So it's not to ignore all that. What it does do, though, is it misses the point that so much of that isn't the case anymore. And the worker would not be able to produce those widgets, that product, if the tools and infrastructure weren't provided by the capitalist. That's what the meme misses. And if it could be, then the best thing for that laborer to do would be to start their own business or to start their own shop or to build their own structure. It's just really hard to do that. So if I work at a metal shop, for instance, just to pick a random example, with 50 employees, and I work at a metal shop and I go in and I produce intricate things that take a lot of skill, take a lot of experience, take a lot of time and passion and energy to produce these items that are going to be a part of some massive contraption, and I build all these things, I'm probably using $20,000 and $30,000 machines. I'm in hopefully a somewhat air-conditioned space where I'm not freezing or I'm not super hot. There's bathrooms provided, there's parking, there's all the things that go into it. I can't make those items for my boss if I don't have those tools in place. And my boss can't provide those tools unless he extracts some of the profit or some of the value out of what I produce in order to have those tools available. Now, if I can make those products without what my boss provides, then I absolutely should do it on my own. I should start my own business. I should work out of my garage. That is what I see as one of the upsides to capitalism or to a free market economy, that two guys can sit in their garage and build Hewlett-Packard or build Apple or Microsoft and everything else being built from the ground up by people with a little ingenuity, a little risk, and being in the right place at the right time. If you read books like Outliers, it takes a little bit more than that. So to say that a capitalist is evil because he extracts 70%, 60%, 80% of what a worker produces without acknowledging not only the risk that the capitalist took to build the infrastructure in the first place, but the ongoing cost of maintaining those machines, of replacing them, of leasing the building or carrying a mortgage on the property, it's kind of silly. We're not really having a conversation now if it's not about what the capitalist put into it or what the manager put into it or what the owner of the company put into it.
What conversation is happening from the standpoint of the people that are posting the memes?
Yeah, I think they're feeling taken advantage of. I think they're feeling like the work that they're doing, they're not being rewarded for it adequately, that they should be getting a bigger piece of the pie. And I don't know that they've acknowledged or that they're thinking through what it takes to produce that pie, to give them an opportunity to do what they do and to get the wages that they're getting. And I can say this, especially for a small business. I can't really speak to larger companies, let's say, anything over 150 employees or, something that's national or global, even like an IBM or Amazon or something like that. I can't speak to the metrics and the dynamics there, but I suspect that they're probably similar to an experience that I've had, which was to not actually own a company or to have employees, but to be pretty close to it. My wife and I attempted to buy a facility with around 20 to 22 employees already in place. And we were going to be owning the building. We were going to own the real estate. We were going to own all the materials for this facility. And then we were going to be responsible for providing employment to these 21 to 22 people who already worked at the business. And part of our due diligence for deciding if we wanted to buy the building, the business, and all the assets was to review the books to see how much money comes in and how much money goes out on expenses, on things like insurance, on the food that's required, on the utilities, of course, paying the salaries, paying the taxes on the salaries, paying the insurance for the full-time employees. And as many times as we looked at it, as many different ways as we crossed it over, it still came out that based on the income from the state was paying contract to house individuals that needed housing. It was really hard to raise the salaries of the people that were providing the service and still have a business that ran in the black. Because obviously if it goes in the red and there's no profit being made and you're losing it, then eventually you lose the business, the people lose their job, and nobody's happy. And we started out wanting to buy the business, and one of our goals was we're going to enhance the lives of our employees by providing better salaries, making sure they have adequate insurance, time off for their families, all the things that you want to do if you're looking to help people feel like they're more satisfied in their work and they're having a better work experience. And as we looked closer and closer at the numbers and the books and the income and what it would take, there just wasn't a lot of room. The person at the top, the capitalist, the owner, whatever you want to call him, the manager, the boss, there wasn't a lot of money left over. And you either cut employees' salaries, you cut the number of employees, you do more work yourself, or you find some way to increase the amount of income that's coming into the business. You cut costs some other way, which almost inevitably is going to have an impact on the quality of the work experience for the workers. So there just, as much as we wanted to, there just wasn't enough left over to be able to enhance the pay or the benefits or anything like that. And so what we were faced with was what the current owner was faced with was a high turnover rate and a difficulty in attracting quality people to do the job because he couldn't pay as much as you'd like. And I know if I was an employee in that situation, if I didn't know all that information, if I didn't have a good look at the money coming in, the money coming out, and all the other expenses that went along with it, so many expenses, such a long list of things that the boss has to pay for in addition to paying their employees and their salaries. I might have felt like, you know what, I'm only making, just to pick a number, $14 an hour. That's ridiculous. I should be making more money. I need more money than that to survive. And while they might have been accurate that they need more money than that, there just wasn't any to give. And so I had some optimism and some idealism about, well, we're just going to buy this business. We'll raise everybody's salaries. We'll take a little bit less and it'll be a good thing. We'll improve the community and the quality of the community. We didn't end up buying the business for other reasons, but it also was kind of a wake-up call to see that for a lot of small business owners who want to pay their employees more or pay their employees as much as they can, and now the employee can't maybe afford a home or has to work 2 jobs, and they want to blame the boss. They want to blame the capitalist. They want to blame the system for the fact that they can't make more money, or they aren't making more money, and the fat cats are just reaping all the benefits at the top of the pyramid. I just think that's inaccurate for a lot of folks. I think your criticism is being directed at the wrong boogeyman. It isn't necessarily your boss. It isn't necessarily the owner of your company that's hoarding all their profits or keeping you down or putting you in a position where you can't make a better life for yourself. It might be the system. It might be the limits that are placed on you by your social economic status. It might be a lot of other things which are worth criticizing. But just to put it all under the heading of capitalism per se, without delineating or without talking about specific instances, I think just misses the point and misses the opportunity for improvements to be made.
Yeah, and I think that can be said about a lot of small businesses. I think, I don't remember what the number is, but doesn't the SBA has some number of how many percentages of small businesses fail within the first 2 or 5 years or something like that.
So it's a high percentage,
like 80% or something stupid. So
pretty high.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a challenge for a lot of the small businesses. And at the same time, I would challenge to say that that's one very large experience that you had, while there's tens of millions of Americans who work for national corporations. Like you said at the beginning, you don't have talk to that. So I think probably where some of the challenge gets to from the communication standpoint is you have tens of millions of people that work for these big corporations that because they're so big, they're public. And so then they have to show how much money,
their profits
that they are shoveling. The profits. And there's never, for almost most of all of these companies, even as they're still laying off, we're talking about current times, laying off thousands of employees, they're still making profit and there's still not a concern of them to be missing it. So it's not the same case as a small business where maybe, oh my gosh, this month I'm not sure if we can even make it type of a situation. The interesting part is I think then you have very loud national strikes that are covered on the news, social media, and you have walkouts. And so then there's this very large subset of people who do say, hey, I do want a larger piece of the pie. We were talking about Karl Marx's, the theory is the labor theory of value. And so those people at some of those levels were saying, hey, and the national, we have people that are on strike and they're saying, hey, I'm making a widget that you get $100 of profit after you pay for the parts. And so I make that in a day, but you only give me $5 for the day. And so they're saying they want to get given a little bit more of that $100 because of how much they put in for that. And so then I think then you have tens of millions of other Americans who work for small business owners who see all of that coming from that and go, oh, they're making so much profit.
Right.
And then be like, oh, my employer has 20 employees or 15 employees. I bet you they're making so much money. So there's another added thing, I think, on top of this entire miscommunication or talking about having the wrong conversations, you get even that too, where whoever says that you get paid in relation to the problems that you solve. If you feel like you're able to solve problems, pretty complex problems, and you're not getting paid adequately enough for it, and you're at a small business, well, in capitalism, that you then leave and you go work for somewhere else who then is going to value your
problem solving
skills, at a higher value for it.
Or you start your own business where you're at the top and now you have the headaches and the expenses and the risk of a month where you don't have any money. And
exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I would definitely say that our system is not set up to encourage that last option that I just mentioned. I think the system of public education and indoctrination systemically, I'm not trying to blame this on any one particular person or agency or anything like that. I definitely, especially as part of the industrial boom, has conditioned us to just show up, do your job, go home, and don't try to start your own competing version of the business.
Which one could argue is because then the people at the top wouldn't be the people at the top any longer.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. So that could be a critique of what capitalism has become in this version. Some people call it late capitalism or late stage capitalism is a term, which I think is another bit of a misnomer. It's gotten a little more popular to say, I think somewhat hopefully for people who feel that capitalism is immoral. It's actually coined, I think, in the beginning of the 20th century. So it's been around for about 100 years now. And it's another one of the things that's been picked up from Marx, because there was, depending on the version, there's 4 or 5 stages of capitalism. And according to that summary of the 4 or 5 stages of capitalism, we're in the last one. And so it's late stage capitalism because there's nothing to come after this except for collapse. And then
post-capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Post-capitalism, something better, which different people have their versions of what that would look like.
However, which currently really the only mainstream solutions to that are the other isms.
Exactly.
Right. Communism, socialism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Nobody's been able to really come up with a better idea or better solution that doesn't include some of that or some version of those, for sure. And with the late stage capitalism idea, it is also a hypothesis or a theory, probably more of a hypothesis, because we don't know. We don't know how long. We don't know if there's a 6th stage or a 7th stage of capitalism. It's just, well, based on conjecture, we're in the final stage because we say so, for the people that say so. To me, it sounds a little bit like the earth is going to be gone in 30 years if we don't do something right now, or Jesus is coming back in my lifetime. This is the last generation that's going to be on the planet, so we got to get busy getting people saved. I think that's the similar type of mentality around late stage capitalism. People want whatever is happening to be over so bad, and they can't see what would be next, what another stage would be like. So they imagine that they're in the final version of that, the final iteration of it, like we're in the last chapter of whatever that thing is. And so that becomes the reality, because we can't prove that we're in late stage capitalism. We can't prove that this is even the last version of it or the last iteration of it. There might be 20 more. There might be one, or this might be the end. We don't know. It's all conjecture at this point. So I would even say just using the term late stage capitalism as if it was the last one is inaccurate. We can use it as it's the last one we can think of, or it's the last one we can conceptualize of, or it's the last one because we don't know what would be next. But to imply that this means we're at the end of it, I think is a little naive, maybe a little wishful thinking for people who have been wounded by it, have been hurt by it, have felt exploited by it, have been exploited by it, have had things taken from them. It's certainly not a perfect system, not trying to defend it. I'm more just trying to tear apart the ways that we talk about it, the ways that we criticize it. Which, go along with that, I think we need to delineate if we're talking about free markets or if we're talking about capitalism. Those two terms often get used interchangeably, and they're not necessarily the same. Almost everybody wants to have a free market. Everybody wants to have the option to buy something if they want, or not buy something if they don't, and come to a mutually agreed upon price for that object or service. And we often confuse that with capitalism, which it's not, because capitalism, and especially the American version of capitalism, grossly interferes with our ability to have a free market. We don't have a free market in most cases. I think probably the closest thing would be a garage sale, a neighborhood garage sale where you can walk up to somebody and have an exchange, and there's no third party that's in the way of it. Nothing that's messing with your ability to agree on a price with the seller or decide if you want to buy it or not buy it. But anywhere else you go, even if you buy a used car, technically you're supposed to pay tax, because when you go to register your vehicle, you're supposed to pay sales tax on top of the registration and everything else. So it's not really a free market anymore. It's a managed market. And there's some good arguments for why there should be oversight in larger transactions and purchases, and why laissez-faire capitalism is always going to favor the fat cats and the owners, because they're going to figure out how to exploit and take advantage of people. And if we didn't have regulations, people would be in a lot worse shape. And so some regulations are helpful, and I can see an argument for that. So it's not here to try to settle that debate or to push people one way or the other. It's just to say that if we're talking about capitalism, are we talking about capitalism, or are we talking about free markets? If we're defending one or the other, which are we defending? And that there is some difference between the two.
Yeah, I'm not sure outside of capitalism what structure you have that you do have free markets in, though.
How you could have one without the other, essentially.
Well, no, like, don't have free markets in communism.
Right.
So you'd need less government interference.
Right.
That's what I was saying. In the structured societies, couldn't have a free market, really.
You could. No, it's once it exceeds a certain mass, a certain number of people, kind of like we've talked about before. It's a fun little concept, and it is a part of capitalism. It's one of the components of capitalism. But once you get much beyond a garage sale or a very small flea market, there's just the complexity and the number of people and the opportunity for exploitation and price fixing and taking advantage of folks and misrepresenting products that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because of that exact point, that's why people have a dissatisfaction with capitalism, because it seems like to a size point, capitalism works really well. And it seems like 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago, capitalism, the scale of how you can communicate with people, get to places, and what trade looks like and what society looks like, that type of capitalism is so much different than the capitalism from today.
Yeah.
Because I think more of when you talk about capitalism, even like in the 1400, 15, 16, 1700s, it is more of like talking about a free market,
right? More
than because capitalism is like profit based. It's like the whole point is to get profit.
Yeah.
So the exchange of goods on a free market basis is not what people are opposing about capitalism. I think from what I've seen, more of that someone has to lose, and most of the time it's them, for someone else to succeed, because it's all just focused on profits.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm thinking about a meme that might be as inaccurate on the other side of the coin would be, it's a picture and it shows a person that says, I have a bushel of apples, you have 2 doves. You want my apples, I want your doves. Let's trade. There you go. Like that should be as complicated as any economy should be. A barter system, I think, would be the best way to summarize that. Yeah. And so, again, that's great in a small village. That's great with people who have a reasonable amount of trust and respect for each other and have to see each other every day. But you expand much beyond that. We all know the corruption and the opportunity that's there. And then the profit motive, I think, is a good thing to bring in that as well. Because in that barter situation, there isn't an opportunity for somebody to win or lose necessarily. That isn't the goal. It's to get your needs met. And so that would definitely be a very valid critique of capitalism, was if it brings in that profit motive and for you to make more off of something than what you put into it. That would serve as a potential downside, a dehumanizing factor.
Yeah, because I think keep on going back farther in time, and it's like, you could have an outcome of a free market be profit, but that's not going to be on the backs of somebody else.
Right.
Like you're trading and the person's like, I need some loaves of bread. I mean, you can still be like, I'm going to withhold this stuff unless you give me more, like we talk about as far as corruption.
Right.
But even if you didn't have corruption, you still could have someone who, quote unquote, profits off of the free market. But capitalism, I mean, even look at the definition online, and that it's about getting more profits.
Yeah. And profit for profit's sake and capital for capital's sake.
Right.
I saw a video recently where somebody, I don't remember who it was, I'd like to give him credit for it, but I can't remember off the top of my head. had done a video, and they were attempting to answer the question of why art has been so stagnant. Fashion has been so stagnant. Movies have just had recycled tropes for the last 30, 40, 50 years. That if you look at a cross-section of how art, culture, music, storytelling, clothing, fashion had changed previous to the last 40 or 50 years, that it was always moving, it was growing as it was expanding. You could tell the difference by the way somebody dressed over a period of 10 or 15 years. And the point this creator was making was that if you look back 20, 30 years ago at sitcoms, people kind of dressed the same way that we do now. Things are somewhat recycled in a very short time period. We don't have a lot of innovation. We don't have creativity. You and I can attest to the frustration at the Star Wars saga not developing or progressing beyond the first three. I don't know if anybody sees Marvel movies anymore because it just like they had one theme and rehashed it 15 times or something like that. And
I think 26 times.
26 times. Just keeping track at home. And anytime there's a new, like, cool sci-fi movie coming out, you know it's only going to be part one of as many as they can get. The new Dune or some psychological thriller or something that comes out that's going to be a big blockbuster. I'm surprised if I go see a movie like that and it's really good and it's not a part one, which feels a little bit cheap. Because you're like, okay, now I'm making an investment in something that I might not see part two of for 3 years from now or something like that. It can't be a standalone. And so what this creator was, the point he was making is the reason why we see this is because art, fashion, storytelling, movies, all of that has been reduced to the pursuit of capital. And it's a calculation of not about what's good art or what's a good story or what's good innovation.
What's going to sell.
What's going to sell. Exactly. And so we know that the formula for the original 3 Star Wars movies sold, and then the prequels did okay. And so we're going to make the final 3. We just need to stick with what works. Why try to expand on the storyline or
everybody likes this series because of this story. So why would we change it?
Yeah.
Just do the same.
Just add some different characters, some different CGI, and people will buy it. And so, yeah, same with the fashion, same with all the subs. So what we would then have as a result of that might be a diminished society because we don't have innovative fashion. We don't have innovative stories. We don't have innovative art to experience and to inform us. It's all about what's going to sell, what's going to make money, what's going to produce capital or profit. You know, it's going to produce laziness. It's going to produce maybe writer strikes. Maybe that's part of, you know, the problem with those who are in the creative industry who want to make something new, make something fresh, make something innovative and aren't able to because it's too risky, might not sell, might not. So I think that would be a really good critique if we could make some more connections there, which again, this was a, you know, somewhat of a hypothesis or theory by this person and just been noodling around in my brain. And to whatever degree that's true, it is sad. And it is a reason why, you know, to critique capitalism as an end to itself.
If what's true?
If art has been held back.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hard thing
to
really prove, but it makes sense.
You can look too, I don't have nearly enough info on this, but yeah, the same type of thing. Like if you look at all of the top 10 songs for the last 30 years, 40, 50 years, they all have like the same 4 notes in them or something like that. He mentioned
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are we still regurgitating top song from NSYNC from 30 years ago?
Yeah.
It's just being recycled in a different format or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see it. There's whole videos of, you can watch all that. So yeah, it's the same thing. It's just because they know that sound sells.
Right.
And so then that's all that they'll create.
And so even as a creator, an artist, or a music producer, it's less about what do I want to express? What do I think needs to be said in an artistic format? It's what's the most likely sound or words or language that's going to produce the most amount of income or capital. And so that's the starting point for producing a song or an album, for instance. Less about what do I want to say or what needs to be said or how do I want to express myself. And then the artists that do that are considered, you know, the rebels or the fringe artists or the outliers who don't get paid or don't get the same notoriety or something like that.
Which I think is an argument for like what I keep saying and have said for quite a while, that we need something other than the isms to come along that we have not thought of. No one knows. No one's already constructed. They don't have an idea. We haven't tested it in a country, whether that's 10 years from now, 100 years from now, or 1,000 years from now. us as humans need to grow and be able to come up with some other type of structure.
Yeah.
And I think we absolutely will. That doesn't allow corruption, doesn't create corruption. It doesn't make someone have to go down for other people to go up. So if we need something else, what's that something else? Remember that art. Let's come back to the art.
Okay.
I always keep coming back to the idea of the Federation from Star Trek of just where your needs are met, where it's food, shelter, clothing, it's met. And we are all met there because we all know that we need that, and we all care and want all the rest of us humans to be able to have it. So then I thought, as you were saying that about the art, I was thinking, oh, that's really interesting to think of that artist, maybe that songwriter, that singer, that performer is having to change, kind of do it a little bit differently to match what sells. Well, why? Oh, because they're doing this for their income so that they can have food and shelter and clothing. So then thinking like, oh my gosh, once we get to that spot that we aren't doing the singing for work, just like we're not doing this podcast for work to then have to change and conform to what's going to be able to make it sell and what's going to make it go and grow. Same thing for them. There's a large possibility that we as a society open up creativity, blows the top open once people are able to do things without it having to be for their job.
Which is funny because I know we've talked about that and others have for a while now with the emergence of AI. And then I saw something recently that flipped it on its head and said, we used to think AI was going to take over all the menial tasks so we'd have time to write poetry and do drawings. And it looks like AI is actually doing the poetry writing and doing the drawings for us.
Right. Yeah.
That seems to be what we see mostly out there right now, at least in this version of it. Who knows what the future will hold, but people get really fascinated about all the ways that AI can produce art, written and visual.
And that's another layer of it too. You think of what's happened technologically in the last 100 years, and then just to go forward in another 100 years, what quote unquote work looks like, and manufacturing and producing, and with technology and AI, I think that's going to be something that probably is going to kick us in the butt or jumpstart what I would imagine would be a transition from the isms to something may have to go through something.
It'd be nice if we could ask the AI to come up with that thing that we can't conceive of.
Yeah.
Give it enough data about our dissatisfaction with the isms.
Yeah, it's funny. That's like Joe Rogan's big thing. He always talks about the AI president, Mr. AI president, for that exact same reason. Be able to have something that's not built on emotion.
Right.
But it's just the self-care of humans and our continued existence and reproduction. And it's not about profits. It's not about corruption. There's no emotion.
No ego involved.
No ego at all. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, and then we'd have to speculate if humans are the thing that is informing the AI. Is that non-human version even possible?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oof, that's fun.
Yes. Well, like Elon Musk even talks about their autopilot system. They never even coded it and taught it to even how to read, or that they wanted it to read, and it learned how to read street signs all on its own. The AI system that they have in the cars.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a little wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, kind of to tie this all back around to the meme I wanted to criticize, I think everything you're saying is great. It's a good point. There's got to be something bigger than that. And that's probably part of where my frustration comes from, is I don't think that trying to guilt or legislate CEOs of companies to share their profits with their workers is really what's going to get us to the future that we all want. I think that's a red herring or a distraction or just a pathway that is going to lead to a dead end. Trying to equalize the gap between boss and laborer through mechanisms of redistribution, which is what Marxism is all about, doesn't have a long-term hook for me. The end result of equality and equity is definitely worth fighting for and figuring out. And the memes that just say the boss needs to give me more of his profits because I worked for it. It feels like it's going in a dead end. It feels like it's just taking us in a direction that doesn't really get us where we need to be. Doesn't restart the system or revamp it in a way that would be helpful long term.
I like it.
I just like his shirt. When it was the 90s.
Yeah.
Shamala. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Did you just buy it, or do you?
Oh man, Mom and I both
or?
bought one. Yeah,
Okay.
I think after the third or fourth video, it was sold. We actually tried to go see him when he came to the Spokane Comedy Club,
Really?
but
I didn't know he did.
it just didn't work out.
Didn't quite come together.
No.
Yeah.
We were very bummed.
And he's in Fort Wayne, right? Or from Fort Wayne, or
Not Fort Wayne, it's a small town in Indiana.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Similar culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Has he ever done like a special, like a?
Yeah. He's
Congratulations.
got one out there. It's like on Prime and something else. You have to pay for it.
Okay.
It's nothing that for free, but
Yeah.
you have to rent it.
Gotcha.
Or buy it. But yeah, you can get it on there.
Yeah, I've only
just
ever
had one.
seen his little TikTok clicks.
Yeah, and then he went
Yeah.
and just had a tour that he just got.
Okay.
Yeah, like I was saying, just got done doing.
And what's his name again?
Kevin James Thornton.
Kevin James Thornton. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very relatable.
Yes. Yeah. Grew up in a fundamentalist church in a small town in Indiana in the 90s. So, yeah.
Very relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's pretty funny.
Yeah. That's great. So let me move on to another one if you got time. This other one, it's kind of a meme, but it's also a statement that I've heard people make. So I've got a picture of two people looking at a painting, and it shows kind of a Dante's Inferno version of hell with tortured souls and fire and demons and pitchforks and that sort of thing. And one person says to the other, as they're both looking at this image, that says, if you need the threat of hell to be a good person, then you're just a bad person on a leash. So it's essentially attacking Christian moralism, because for a lot of Christian moralists or fundamentalists or even religious people in general, it's this idea that if you don't have the compulsion of a God or the threat of hell or the promise of heaven to make you be a good person, then you're just going to go out and do all kinds of terrible things. And I think you mentioned on a previous episode, Ricky Gervais made it famous by saying, I do all of the raping and killing and pillaging I want, which is zero. I don't need God or religion to keep me at bay or to keep me on a leash. This is ringing a bell, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm following you.
Okay, cool. So I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think I get stuck, and I genuinely wanted to hear what your thoughts are on this, because I'm kind of at a point where I can't get it past it in my own. It's the idea that what that meme seems to imply is that we have free will to choose what kind of person we want to be. And I don't know that I necessarily just subscribe to that as much as I think that meme is trying to make it out to be. It seems to indicate that we're all sort of vanilla palettes, and we come out of, our moms, and we're raised and whatever, and we have influences, but at the end of the day, we choose whether we want to rape, murder, steal, or kill, whatever the thing might be that we would judge as undesirable or immoral or bad or a sin. And that religious people need a leash, or they need a compulsion, or they need a restriction to hold them back. They need that invisible fence, the collar that keeps the dog from going out into the street. And that somehow that they're less of a person maybe, or they're not as moral because they need a leash. Whereas a non-religious person who doesn't do those things is maybe somehow better because they can control themselves without the threat of hell or without the threat of God being mad at them, and they can just do it because they're a good person. What I get stuck with is I don't think any of us are truly fully culpable or responsible for the actions we do or don't do, because we're born into a certain situation. We inherit certain traits from, some people say, up to now 14 generations behind us that's carried genetically and passed down to us. So we're born with a set of predispositions. We're born with a set of biological and genetic programming, and then the environment acts upon us to activate or to release or to start or to open or to close or to not activate some of those genetic responses. And then we also add in our free will and our decisions. But it isn't just we all sit here with a clear A or B choice to do or to not do, and we make a decision based on whether we're a good or a bad person. And then even if it was that, we're either a good or a bad person, do we get to choose that, or is that just a state of being? I almost feel like it's an atheistic version of Calvinism. And Calvinism is a religious fundamental belief system that says God either created you to go to hell or God created you to go to heaven. you're predestined. Predestination is the term they use. It's predetermined. You can't really change that. You can't really control that. You're either born to go to hell or you're born to go to heaven. And hopefully you're one of the people going to heaven. But if you're not, sucks to suck. Like there's nothing you can really do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the whole argument with that version of Christianity is, well, then how can God hold you responsible for that? If you go to hell, how can he punish you and send you to hell if he created you to be the kind of person that's going to go to hell? And that gets in a bit of a loop. But in this case, I almost feel like that meme is saying, if you need a leash to keep you from being a good person, then you're not really a good person. You're a bad person. But is anybody really bad or good? Because do any of us get to really choose that? Or is it just the thing that we have?
Well, I think if you were someone that believed that the Bible is the word of God, you would think that we're all bad people.
Yeah, born with a sin nature.
Right.
Yeah, that comes with it. Yeah, I think I'm stepping out for this conversation. I'm stepping outside of that. I'm more asking it from the perspective of the non-religious person in this meme who said, if they're only doing good things because of the threat of hell, then they're actually a bad person on a leash.
Uh-huh.
So I'm thinking of looking at it from the non-religious person's perspective. What are they stating about the nature of reality? I might have gone in too many circles here. I wound myself up in a knot.
No, I think the non-religious person in that meme, I would assume, is stating presumably what the other person, the religious person, has stated or said, that they're holier than thou, they're better, they're a good person.
Okay.
They're religious, they're righteous.
Gotcha.
And then that person's saying, well, you're only that way because you don't want to go to hell.
I see. So you're not better than me after all.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of calling out the hypocrisy of their supposed righteousness.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If they didn't have that, they wouldn't be better than you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes a little more sense. Since I've become less religious or non-religious, I've also been able to give myself and other people more grace for basically being a person and doing the best they can. It seems like in most every case, I haven't found an exception yet to the rule since I've let go of the belief that you stated that everybody's born inherently sinful and wicked, and we have to either on our own efforts or by relying on a higher power, we have to try to suppress or get beyond that wickedness, that wicked impulse. Since I've let that version of reality go or that belief system go, I now see the world much more like everybody is doing the best they can with what they have. Nobody wants to hurt themselves or hurt other people. If they do so, they do so because of pain and wounding and hurt that's been inflicted upon them, which was only inflicted upon them because the people doing that inflicting were hurt and wounded and brought that pain and that shame and that into the system, which you could zoom out far enough and go into a systemic viewpoint and say, well, that is sin. That pattern, that habit, sure, that could be one word for sin or one version of sin. But if we're all only doing what we can do, we're doing the best that we can. If we make poor choices, it's because poor choices were made for us or against us or towards us or examples were set. At the end of the day, it leaves us all in the same place of neutrality. We're all trying as hard as we can to do the best that we can based on the information that we have. And if I'm a good parent or a bad parent, it's not my fault or not to my credit. It's because I got good training or good exposure or got lucky or the stars lined up just right with the decisions that I made. And if it falls apart, it's not because I'm a bad person or because I did a bad thing. It's just because I did what I thought was the best and it wasn't in that exact environment or in that situation. So I think that the margin of people who are genuinely bad, if it's not zero, it's very small. That's the perspective I'm working with right now.
Yeah, I would agree with most of that. One thing I would clarify from my opinion would be being a bad person is not the same as not taking responsibility for something. So
okay.
like you were saying, if you got somewhere, you didn't get somewhere, it wasn't because of something bad that you did. It could be a lack of something that you did or a bad choice that you did. Doesn't mean that who you are is evil or a bad person, but you were unsuccessful, or it was because you did get up at 4:00 every single morning and spend an hour working out is the reason that you had the results that you were looking for. I can agree with definitely that maybe even the reason that you were able to even be able to come up with the idea to get up at 4 o'clock and work out, or to even be able to get up at 4 o'clock, could be because of things that have progressed over the last 14 generations that have
outside of your control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where you grew up and all that stuff
You had a
to
good
get
model
there. And at the same time, you do have to grab.
You have to go for it.
You have to do something. With that.
And so what I'm pushing on even further is the ability to grab or to do something with it. Is that really a choice? Or is that even our ability to take advantage of an opportunity, something that we either have or don't have? We're either given or we're not given. I don't know the answer. That's just what I'm kind of throwing out there. So at the end of the day, can anybody that doesn't work out, even though they have the opportunity to work out, if they weren't given the hardware or the software to be able to make the right choice, even with the situation being in their lap?
But that's what I was saying, though, that, they've had that for 14 generations, but they still have to go ahead and make the actual effort to move forward.
But is that effort something that everybody has? The potential for that effort? It sounds like you're saying it is.
I'm saying that they're having that because of the things that have happened in those 14 generations. Some people do, and some people don't have those. So I think it's like we're talking about like 3 subsets of people. 2 that come down from a branch of that they were set up for success, but then didn't grab the bull by the horn, or didn't grasp it, take the opportunity. And then you have a subset of people who didn't have the opportunity. And it's not just simply they were born in a wrong place, or like they were unable to achieve or have the same outcome as the 2 other people. Completely impossible.
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm saying, is that there's subsets. So there are some people that don't have the ability to be able to grab the opportunity. But I do think that there are some people that do have the ability to take that opportunity, but don't do it.
We don't do it. Yeah.
What do you say about that? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would push back on is even the ability to take the opportunity, something that they can choose. So I think I'm just questioning, do any of us have any free will at all? Because the only reason they wouldn't choose that would be something in their brain that says don't do that, or you don't deserve that, or there's some blockage or some reason.
But I think that's only coming from the standpoint that there's a right and a good thing. Like you're still black and white.
Because I'm moralizing it maybe, or making something better than something else.
That, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I am. And I'm doing that because the meme that I started with says you're a bad person on a leash. Like the non-religious person is telling the religious person.
But I think only from the viewpoint of the religious person.
Okay. All right. So he's like using their language against
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's clicking.
Clicking
now. Okay. Yeah. All right. No, that helps. Yeah. I thought he was making his own judgment, but he's really just using their language to point out the hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. I like that. That's good. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's what I had. Anything else pop up for you to mention?
No.
Okay.
No.
Till next time.
Till next time.